All right, let's dive into some ancient wisdom today.
Ooh, sounds exciting.
We're looking at the Tripura Rahasya,
I've heard of that.
a text that's been guiding spiritual seekers for, well, a very long time.
Yeah, ages.
And you know what? It was highly recommended by Sri Ramana Maharshi himself.
Oh, wow. That's a pretty big endorsement.
That's what I thought too.
So what's so special about this Tripura Rahasya? It's not your average philosophy textbook, is it?
You're right about that.
It's considered one of the great works on Advaita philosophy.
Which is?
The idea that there's only one ultimate reality, Brahman, and everything else is, well, an illusion.
Ah, I see. So that's where the illusion part comes in that we were talking about before.
Exactly.
But the cool thing is,
Yeah.
the Tripura Rahasya uses stories and analogies to make these complex ideas easier to grasp.
That's clever.
So we're not going to be slogging through dry philosophical jargon all day.
Definitely not.
So before we jump into the text itself, can you give us the big picture? What are the major themes we're going to be exploring in this deep dive?
Think self-realization, the nature of reality, and, of course, illusion.
Oh, good call.
Petty stuff, I know.
Yeah.
But the Tripura Rahasya has a way of making it all feel surprisingly relatable.
I hope so. And getting our hands on this text is already pretty special in itself.
What do you mean?
Apparently, there weren't even any English translations until 1938.
You're right. It was passed down orally for centuries, from one sage to another,
Right.
starting with Dattatreya,
Okay.
then to Parasurama, and finally to the sage Haratayana, who compiled it all into the text we have today.
So we're talking about a lineage of wisdom that's been carefully preserved for generations.
Absolutely. We're accessing something really precious here.
That's amazing. It definitely adds a whole new layer to the experience.
I agree.
And you know what?
What?
Even the publisher's note and the foreword in this edition,
Yeah.
they really emphasize how highly regarded this text is.
Yeah, it's true. And that reverence is partly because of the captivating stories it weaves into its teachings.
Oh, you mean like that story about Dattatreya and the dutiful wife?
Exactly. The one where she literally stopped the sun from rising.
It sounds unbelievable.
Right. Her husband was cursed to die at sunrise.
Oh, no.
Apparently, he wasn't the nicest guy.
Karma.
And
Yeah.
her love was so powerful, it disrupted the whole cosmic order.
That's incredible. But how does that story fit into the larger teachings of the Tripura Rahasya? Is it just a random tale, or is there more to it?
Oh, there's definitely more to it.
Okay, I'm listening.
It sets the stage for everything we're going to explore.
Like what?
The power of the mind, the nature of reality,
Mhm.
and, the lengths we go to for the people we love.
Okay, I'm starting to see how it connects.
And that brings us to the text itself.
So how is it all organized?
Well, the Tripura Rahasya is laid out in chapters, each with its own focus, like signposts guiding us through these complex concepts. And our first stop is Chapter 3, The Power of Association with the Wise.
Ooh, I like the sound of that already. Wise company is never a bad thing.
Absolutely. And in this chapter, we meet Prince Hemachyuta.
A prince.
Yep, he's on a quest to find a bride.
Okay, sounds like a typical fairy tale so far.
But this is where it gets interesting.
Really?
He encounters Himaleka, a princess who's more interested in wisdom than romance.
Ooh, I like her already.
Me too. She's on her own quest, you see,
Oh,
to find the greatest joy in life.
that's a big quest.
It is. And she's not afraid to ask the tough questions.
About what?
About what truly brings lasting happiness.
So she's not just going to be swayed by a pretty face or a fancy title.
Exactly. She challenges Hemachyuta to think beyond those superficial desires.
I bet he wasn't expecting that.
Nope. And she does this through storytelling.
Wait, so there's stories within the main story.
You got it. That's one of the things that makes the Tripura Rahasya so engaging.
I like it already.
Yeah.
So what's one of the tales Amaleka spins?
She tells the story of another prince, a handsome one this time, who becomes completely disillusioned with beauty.
A disillusioned prince. Now, I have to hear more about that.
Oh, we'll definitely get to that.
But I'm sensing a theme here already.
You're picking up on it. And this leads us right into Chapter 4, Beyond Sensual Pleasure,
Okay, things are getting interesting.
where Himaleka uses this prince's story and a rather shocking character
Fill me more.
to illustrate her point about the nature of beauty.
I'm on the edge of my seat.
Well, this prince, completely smitten with a princess, walks in on her. Let's just say in a compromising position.
Ooh, scandalous.
With someone far from conventionally attractive.
Wow, that's a twist. So what happens next?
That's where we'll leave it for now.
Oh, come on.
We'll uncover the rest of this story and the deeper meaning behind it in part 2 of our deep dive into the Tripura Rahasya.
Okay, fine. I guess I can wait. but you better be ready with the good stuff next time.
I promise it'll be worth the wait.
All right, listeners, stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive into the Tripura Rahasya, where we'll uncover the secrets of beauty, illusion, and maybe even a little bit of scandal. All right, back to the Tripura Rahasya and that story of the princess and, well, her unexpected companion.
Oh yeah, that's right. Himalaya was making a point with that tale.
So what was she getting at with all that?
Well, remember, she's trying to challenge our ideas about beauty.
Yeah, to think beyond just the surface level.
Exactly, and seeing the prince's reaction, his ideal of beauty with, well, someone so different.
Yeah, I can't imagine that went over well.
It forces him and us as the readers to confront this idea that maybe, just maybe, beauty isn't inherent in the object itself.
So it's all in our heads.
Yeah.
That beauty is subjective.
Bingo. She even suggests that what one person might find repulsive,
Yeah.
another might find, well, beautiful.
That's a pretty bold statement, isn't it?
It is, and it's meant to provoke us, to make us really examine how our minds work.
So we're all just walking around projecting our own ideas of beauty onto the world.
In a way, yes.
But taking that further, does that mean that even, say, the foulest parts of the body could be considered beautiful by someone?
She doesn't shy away from that idea, that even those aspects of the body
The ones we usually find disgusting?
can be seen as beautiful through a different lens.
Well, it's a lot to take in.
It is. And it connects back to that core idea in Advaita philosophy, remember?
Remind me.
The idea that reality is ultimately a projection of consciousness.
Ah, right, that we're creating our own reality.
Precisely.
So how does this idea of the world as a projection play out in the rest of the Tripura Rahasya?
It's woven throughout the text, but we see it really clearly in chapter 14, the world as imagination.
The world is imagination, huh? Sounds trippy.
It is, and it uses the story of King Janaka and this debate in his court to highlight how true knowledge goes beyond logic and reasoning.
Wait, another debate. These sages loved a good argument, didn't they?
He did, but remember, these debates weren't just for entertainment.
So what were they for?
They were ways of exploring different facets of truth.
Ah, like philosophical sparring matches.
You could say that. And in this case, the debate is all about the nature of reality itself.
Okay, so what's the takeaway? What's the Tripura Rahasya's stance on this whole world as imagination thing?
It presents the world as a kind of magician's illusion, a captivating spectacle that's ultimately unreal.
Hold on, so you're saying the world isn't real?
It's not real in the way we usually think of it, no.
Then how is it real?
Think of it like a magician making things appear and disappear.
Right, smoke and mirrors.
Exactly. Our minds create this illusion of a solid, independent world out there.
But if it's all an illusion, why does it feel so real?
Because we get so caught up in it, we focus on the external world, our thoughts, our desires.
That sounds familiar.
And we forget about the true source of joy, the eternal self, which lies within.
So we're looking for something that's already there.
The Tripura Rahasya uses this great analogy of a prince searching for a lost pearl.
Okay, I'm listening.
The pearl has always been there, but he's looking in all wrong places.
So we're all on this treasure hunt for something we already possess.
In a nutshell, yes.
That's both encouraging and a little frustrating, you know?
Yeah.
But how do we actually turn inward? How do we find that pearl?
That's where practices like meditation come in, calming the mind and focusing our attention.
Makes sense.
And that brings us to chapter 16, the fleeting nature of perception, which suggests something pretty amazing.
What's that?
That we actually experience moments of samadhi, a state of pure consciousness, all the time.
Wait, you mean like we're all having these mini enlightenment experiences without even knowing it?
Well, not full-blown enlightenment, but these glimpses of that pure awareness.
Okay, but how do we miss them?
Because they're fleeting and we're so distracted by all the external noise.
So it's like we need to learn to tune out the distractions and focus on the subtle signals.
Exactly.
So is everyone capable of reaching this samadhi?
The Tripura Rahasya actually acknowledges that not everyone is wired the same way when it comes to quieting the mind.
That makes sense.
And it introduces 3 types of aspirants, each with a different approach to realizing the self.
Ooh, personality types. I like where this is going.
First, there are those who are naturally free from desires, not really attached to material things.
Okay, I'm pretty sure I'm not that type.
Then you have those who still have desires, but they can focus their minds through meditation and turn inward.
Maybe that's more like me. I can meditate sometimes.
And lastly, there are those who are really bound by desires and find it hard to turn their minds inward.
So it's a spectrum, from the naturally detached to the deeply immersed.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that everyone has the potential to move along that spectrum.
That's good to hear.
Because the Tripura Rahasya tells the story of a Brahmin who was considered, well, an idiot.
An idiot.
That's what they called him.
Okay.
But through a series of crazy events, he ends up becoming a king.
Wow. Talk about a glow up.
It's a story about how even those who seem far from enlightenment can experience profound shifts in consciousness.
So there's hope for all of us.
Always. And if there are different types of aspirants, are there different types of jhanas, those who've reached realization?
I was just thinking that.
Well, the text describes 3 types, each experiencing the world in a unique way.
So even within enlightenment, there are levels.
There are.
It seems like the Tripura Rahasya is all about emphasizing that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to spiritual growth.
That's a great observation.
So what about these different jhanas? What are they like?
Well, we'll dive into that in the final part of our exploration of the Tripura Rahasya.
All right, we're in the home stretch now of our Tripura Rahasya deep dive.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. We've covered a lot of ground.
From captivating stories to, well, mind-bending concepts.
Oh yeah, those debates about reality and illusion.
And who could forget that cosmic pep talk from the goddess?
That was pretty amazing.
But now, let's get down to the practical stuff.
Yes, please. After all those stories and metaphors, I'm ready for some concrete guidance.
Well, chapter XE1 is where the rubber meets the road, so to speak.
Okay, what's in chapter 61?
It starts with Parasurama, remember him?
The sage who received the teachings from Dattatreya.
That's the one. He asks a very important question.
Oh.
How can I actually attain this wisdom? What are the signs of someone who's truly realized?
That's a question I think we'd all like an answer to.
Right. Everyone wants to know the secret formula.
So does Dattatreya give him a step-by-step guide?
Not exactly, but he does lay out 3 classes of jnanis, those who've attained different levels of self-realization.
So it's not just about being enlightened or not. There's a whole spectrum of understanding.
You got it.
So tell me about these different levels.
Well, the first level of jnani still identifies with the body to some extent.
So they're on the path, but haven't fully transcended their physical limitations.
Right, they still experience desires and attachments.
Okay, and what about the next level?
The second level of jnani has moved beyond that identification with the body.
So they've mastered their desires.
They've calmed the mind through practice and are less swayed by those desires.
I can picture them meditating in a cave, completely serene.
That's a classic image for reasons.
And then there's the highest level.
The third level of jnani experiences themselves as pure intelligence.
Pure intelligence.
Completely unattached to any form or limitation.
Wow, that sounds incredibly free.
They act in the world, but they're not bound by the results of their actions.
It's like they're playing the game of life, but without getting caught up in the wins or losses.
That's a great way to put it.
So chapter 51 is all about these different levels of jnanis.
It is, but there's also a fascinating story in this chapter.
More stories. I'm all ears.
It's called The Episode of the Ghoul.
A ghoul? That sounds creepy.
It is. It involves a prince, a Brahmin, and an encounter that really highlights how deceiving appearances can be.
Okay, I'm intrigued, but how does it fit into the bigger picture?
It reinforces this idea that we've been talking about.
The world is an illusion.
Exactly, and that true knowledge is about seeing beyond those surface appearances to the real nature of things.
It seems like every story in the Tripura Rahasya challenges our assumptions about reality.
It's like a constant wake-up call.
And as we move into the final teachings in chapter 22, living as a jnani, the focus shifts, right?
It does. It becomes more about how a realized being experiences the world.
Okay, so what's it like to live from that state of pure awareness? Do they just float around in bliss all the time?
Well, the Tripura Rahasya explains that a jnani still experiences pleasure and pain.
Really? So they're not immune to life's ups and downs?
Not exactly, but their understanding of those experiences is different.
How so?
They see those feelings as fleeting sensations, arising and passing away.
They don't get attached to the good or the bad.
Exactly. They don't identify with those feelings in the same way we do.
That sounds incredibly peaceful.
It is. But what about karma, you might be asking? Don't we all have to deal with the consequences of our actions?
Yeah, that's a good question.
The Tripura Rahasya addresses that with the concept of prarabdha.
Prarabdha.
It's the karma that's already in motion and has to play out, like momentum.
So even a jnani still has some karmic baggage to work through.
They do, but the key difference is that they don't create new karma.
Because their actions aren't driven by ego or desire anymore?
Precisely. They're acting from a place of pure awareness.
It's like they've stepped off the karmic treadmill.
A great way to think about it.
So all these teachings, they all point towards this idea of liberation from suffering, right?
Yes. And the Tripura Rahasya offers this beautiful image to illustrate the bliss of the self.
Oh.
It compares it to plugging your ears to hear the subtle inner sounds of your own body.
I like that. It's so simple yet profound.
Just as we can only hear those subtle sounds when we block out the external noise.
We can only experience the bliss of the self when we quiet the mind.
Exactly. It's about tuning out the distractions and turning our attention inward.
This has been an incredible journey. I feel like we've just scratched the surface of the Tripura Rahasya.
There's so much depth to explore in this text.
But even with just this glimpse, it sparked so many new insights and questions.
That's the beauty of these ancient teachings that keep unfolding.
Well, listeners, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the Tripura Rahasya.
It's been a pleasure exploring it with you.
And as always, we encourage you to delve into the text yourself to discover its wisdom firsthand.
Remember that the world is a reflection of our own consciousness.
So, take a look in the mirror. What does that reflection tell you about your own nature?
Until next time, keep seeking, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.
Goodbye, everyone.